Hello, and welcome once again to Loveland's Talking. I'm Andy Hiller. I'm the Public Information Officer here for the City of Loveland, and I'm here this month, as I am with my guests every month, to share with you folks here at home lots of things, interesting things about your City of Loveland government. Today, we're going to talk about probably the most visible department in the city organization, those guys with those big trucks and lights and sirens and ladders and hoses and all of those things. When Loveland Fire and Rescue is at work or nearby, you know it for the most part, but not always, and that's one of the things we're going to focus on today, some of the not so visible elements that they do behind the scenes, that they don't always use lights and sirens and when they're at work. So that's what we're going to talk about. But let me give you a quick overview. Today we're going to talk about how the fire department is organized, the divisions, and what each of those do. Special situations and skills that I know you'll find very interesting, and also possibly a future change in how the whole organization is governed and run. So with me today, dressed in blue, are three fellas, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Merlin, whose face you've probably seen on this show a few times before. Merlin?
Thank you, Andy. I'm Merlin Green. I'm the Division Chief of what was formerly known as the Fire Prevention Office, and we've recently changed that name to the Community Safety Division.
So we'll talk later about how and why with that.
Okay.
Andy, I'm Randy Murawski, and I'm the Fire Chief here in Loveland. I've had the privilege of being the Fire Chief here for just a little over a year. I officially took the position here on January 5th of 2009, so it's been just a little over a year. My background, though, I've been in the fire service for 35 years, been with 3 different departments, one of them twice, by the way. Started my career in Topeka, Kansas. I moved to Loveland in 1979, and then in 1982 I moved to Poudre Fire Authority in Fort Collins, and then came back to Loveland in 2009. So my second trip through.
Well, Randy, I don't know if Merlin mentioned it because you're kind of the rookie of the group here, and you haven't been on the show before. You need to stand up on the table and sing your high school fight song.
Yeah, let's get that done.
Okay. All right. Greg, if you would.
Hi, Andy. I'm Greg Ward, Battalion Chief with the Fire Department. I work on the suppression side in charge of one of the shifts, and then the program that I manage on the side of that is the Special Operations Team, and I think we're going to spend some time talking about the Special Operations Team today.
Okay. And suppression means you're the folks with the hoses.
Yeah.
You're putting the fires out.
The ones that are out in the big red trucks and going to the medical emergencies and the fires and the car accidents and,
Great.
And that type of thing.
Okay, well, we'll talk more about it. First, we're going to take a little look back. Okay, this looks like it's a long time back, but if the third person from the right, Merlin, isn't that you? Huh?
It is. That was just a couple of years ago for me. Yeah, a little gray since then.
Well, the reason this is here is because I guess you have to explain it to me, but not the fire department officially, but folks in town who are interested, or possibly former fire folks, have worked with the museum to open a fire museum. And this is a picture in the early days, and one of the things that struck me in learning about this is back in the early days there was, I think maybe they had a 2-for-1 coupon or something, but there were 2 fire departments here in town. Can anybody speak about that for a minute or two?
That is correct. There was the Bardoff Hose Company, and then I believe it was Loveland Hook and Ladder, and they were competing departments, and so whoever got to the fire first, that was their incident, and they would actually go out of their way to sabotage you know, the hose carts. I mean,
really?
they're
let the air out of the tires. Although I don't think those tires had air in them back in those days.
Yeah, they were actually, it was highly competitive, and who actually got to the call first. So,
well, and who has put this exhibit together? Do you guys know?
Yeah,
who's responsible for that?
We have the good fortune, Andy, of having a great fire museum here in Loveland, and it is in the old Home State Bank building right adjacent to the museum, where the museum is now. several of our volunteers took a lead role. Our retired volunteers took a lead role in this. Jack Sullivan was one of the retired chiefs that took a strong role. He had lots of help, but they have done an absolutely fabulous job of building just a premier museum. So if people really want to know more about the history of Loveland Fire Department, as Merlin indicated, the Bardolph Hose Company and Loveland Hook and Ladder, it goes back a long ways. You can visit that museum and really get an idea of what went on here in your community. A fabulous effort on their part.
And here's a picture of the building. It used to be the bank building. It's now referred to, I don't know if you guys know this, is the sequel building. In other words, you know, in terms of the museum, this is a sequel to it. So they've expanded the museum. It's right next to the museum on what, the 5th and Lincoln. And that exhibit that you saw prior to this is downstairs and being expanded, and it is kind of fun to look at all those things. So, oh, it's open on weekends, just weekends only. So on a Thursday, you won't be able to see that. You can go to the museum next door, the main building, but not the sequel building. Okay, so let's fast forward 125 years or so and talk about the department's divisions, and we'll start out with you, Greg, and the suppression division, as which we've talked about is you know, the most obvious one of the fire department. Let me start out by asking how many firefighters are there in the Loveland Fire and Rescue?
On the suppression side, we have 57 paid firefighters. And then we have about 24, fluctuates all the time, about 24 volunteers that supplement the paid staff.
And as I understand, and I may misunderstand, I do that a lot, it used to be that when there was a fire, a call would go out and the volunteers would get in their cars and show up there. Now, some volunteers are actually have shift work in the fire station, so they're already there and on the trucks when it goes out. Is that right?
All of our volunteers now are on shift work. They work 36 hours a month in the station, and when you have a truck that goes out on an emergency, you can't tell a volunteer firefighter from a paid firefighter on that crew. They look the same, they're trained the same, and
really?
So they're all in the stations working their shifts with us, mostly nights and weekends.
I gotcha. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, that's when they'd be most available.
Yep.
For the most part. Men and women both, I presume?
On the suppression side, we have one female, I think, right now in the suppression side.
Okay, okay. And fire stations, what's the grand total?
We've got 6 fire stations in Loveland. We have companies in 5 of them all the time.
When you say companies, you're talking about staff people?
Yeah,
okay.
engine companies, truck companies, and
okay.
We staff 5 of them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The 6th station, which is actually Station 4 at the airport, we use that for the airport standbys, that kind of thing, when the flights come in and out, special events. Bad weather, we staff that, and also Thompson Valley Ambulance staffs an ambulance in there right now. So we have 5 stations that run companies out of them all the time.
I see. And it's my understanding from talking with the airport manager that the airliner that comes in almost on a daily basis, you guys are there every time it takes off and lands.
Yep, that's a FAA requirement that we have a standby crew there for all of those flights that come in and out. And then there's probably 2 to 3 unscheduled, or I'm sorry, other flights that come in, CSU
Right.
football or basketball or somebody flying in and that type of thing, that a month that we're scheduled out there for
I see.
standbys.
So
as
basically,
well.
if it's a big passenger plane,
Yes.
and you know in advance, you're there. Cool. Okay. I work basically 8 to 5. You guys don't. How does your schedule work?
We work 24-hour shifts, and it works out to about 10 to 11 shifts per month that we work. We have three shifts. One of us is always on all the time, and we kind of refer to it as our shift is working a third of the year, basically. So we'll work 24 on, 24 off, and after our 3rd shift, we're off for 4 days.
Okay.
All of the paid staff and volunteer staff are subject to recalls if we have major incident, a house
Sure.
fire, that kind of thing, we page the staff back to staff the reserve apparatus, and so we can keep functioning and keep providing services while we're handling a bigger emergency like that. So.
Sure, gotcha. Okay.
Andy, the 24-hour shift has been sort of traditional with the fire service for decades. Different departments use different ways to get to that. We operate, as Chief Ward talked about, it's called a Berkeley system, that descriptor. But there's other ways of doing it. Some do 24 on, 48 off. There's even a new nuance to this that's now called a 48-96, where some firefighters work 48 hours straight and then they have 96 hours off. And they just continue that cycle. But it's just a variation. When I was here in Loveland in 79 to 82, we worked a 5-6 rotation. 5 days out of 10 every other day, and then 6 days off in a row. It's the same schedule, just
All right.
different way of getting it.
Well, the bottom line for us is there's somebody on duty, on call, not on call, on duty, staff in the firehouse, a pole slide away from the truck 24/7.
24 hours a day, 7 days a
Okay.
week.
Okay.
And each company that varies between 2 and 3 people per company.
Yeah.
So it really depends on which station and the type of apparatus and how many people is going to actually be on that rig when it shows up.
Okay. Perhaps I'm incorrect when I say this, but it's my impression that people wonder why a big fire truck shows up at a fender bender in town, and they do, correct? Yeah. Okay. Can you explain that?
In the city of Loveland, the fire department's dispatched to any traffic accidents that have reported injuries.
Reported injuries.
If it's a minor traffic accident and the caller says, I'm here with the other party involved, nobody's hurt, the police department gets dispatched. But if somebody is hurt, we get dispatched to that to assist the ambulance with the medical care. If somebody's trapped inside the vehicle, we have the equipment to extricate, cut the doors off, the top off, that kind of thing to get the people out. And then there's also lots of hazards with the batteries, fuel leaks, even the antifreeze is an environmental hazard and stuff. So it starts to encroach on the hazmat portion of what we do. So that's why we go out and assist on the traffic accidents.
Okay. Okay. Merlin, your division has had a name change.
Yes.
It's been the Prevention Division for some time. Tell us about that and the current duties of the division, and have the duties changed as well, or just kind of a different nomenclature?
Yeah, it's the Fire Prevention Office, or the Bureau, that's been kind of synonymous in the fire service. And typically in fire prevention offices, that's where code enforcement is handled, plan reviews of buildings that have sprinkler requirements, exiting, anything to do with new construction, that's where all of that takes place. Well, over time, those offices have expanded, and that's where you see the main force of public education and awareness. So in our office, we have a very large component that's where the public education lies. That's where we schedule a lot to work with the engine companies to go out, go into schools, providing that public education and awareness along with emergency preparedness activities. And so when I moved into this position, yeah, we're fire prevention, but we're more than that. We're community safety. So that's why our staff looked at, let's change our name to reflect who we are and what we are, and it's all about community safety. It's not just the fire prevention component and inspections to make sure that your exit doors are where there should be and that people are able to exit and your sprinkler systems work, et cetera. So there's more to it than that. But our office is a staff of 5, and like I say, we cover all of those fire investigations, inspections, code enforcement, plan reviews, public education.
Okay, you're kind of the before guys, so to speak.
Before and after.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, yeah.
And I can't help but think it's to your mutual benefit that the more successful you are with education and prevention, the easier your life is to a degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that's important is all the inspections and building reviews and stuff they do. They try and make the buildings as safe as possible for the community
Absolutely.
and us. So when
Well,
there is
yeah.
a fire or something in the building, we have the best chance of trying to save the life or extinguish the fire and make it safer for us when we're having to do that.
Okay. Well, I have learned just in really the last half hour or so, there's a third division, and I wasn't really aware of that, and that's the administrative division. Randy, would you please explain?
Andy, I'd love to do that. Sometimes the administrative side goes kind of unnoticed, but our division in the administrative side, which I have direct oversight of, takes care of things like future planning, both from the strategic, the operational side, the annual planning, we do that. And community safety and suppression, they do their planning as well, but we sort of coordinate, particularly as it applies to long-range planning. We handle most of the budget issues, which also deals with the logistics side of things.
Doesn't have any effect on you guys, does it?
Oh, no, not at all.
You know, and I was going to make this point when Merlin was speaking too, Andy. I want to give Merlin some kudos here because, as most people know, if they've been reading in the Reporter Herald, they've done a great job of covering the city and what we've gone through in the last year relative to budget reductions. And credit to Merlin because we really had to restructure our whole operation because of budget reductions. And Merlin took what was really a negative situation in budget reductions and in some loss of staffing and has really turned it into a positive. The Community Safety Division is really going to make an impact here in our community, and Merlin gets the credit for that, really. So, but back to administration,
Yes.
we also do a lot of the regionalization side. Part of my responsibility is to make sure that we work with other agencies in the region and do our best to work together, pool our resources where we can, and leverage our dollars and our impact. And then finally, my responsibility really is to provide organizational leadership and management for the entire organization. So that's a little bit about what administration does. We work directly with the city's M team here. I'm a member of the M team, the management team, our rural board. I work directly with the rural board. We'll talk more about them in just a moment. And then, of course, our Fire Rescue Advisory Commission, the citizens group. So that's also in my responsibility.
Cool, cool. Okay, well, you guys are the City of Loveland Fire Department, officially Loveland Fire and Rescue. And I did a little homework, and the within the city limits, the city of Loveland, as you can kind of see with the dark green on the map, it makes up about 35 square miles. So that's your guys' area of responsibility, correct? And that's it, right?
No.
No. Oh, what a surprise.
It's not that simple.
Yeah,
So it's less than that?
No, it's actually more than that, Andy.
Really?
just a shade.
Significantly more.
Just a shade. That's a good segue.
That's a good segue.
The shade is kind of the shade of beige here. Is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
The city's 35 square miles, but total area coverage is 265 square miles.
Wow.
And that includes the city of Loveland and the Loveland Rural Fire Protection District.
Okay. Explain how that works, because I know you were talking about the 6 fire stations. They're basically in the 35 square miles, right?
Yes.
So if there's something out west, how is that handled?
How it works,
Yeah.
I'll give the administrative side of this, and then you guys can chime in and
Okay.
pick up how it really works on the street side of things. But we have a long-standing relationship. In fact, there's been a relationship for more than 50 years between the city of Loveland and the Loveland Rural Fire Protection District. We are now in a contract, an intergovernmental agreement where the city of Loveland Fire and Rescue provides services for the Loveland Rural Fire Protection District.
I'm going to interrupt you because I don't know what the Loveland Rural Fire Protection District is? Can you, I mean, is that just a geographic area, or are there other?
It is a geographical area, but
People out there as well.
They have administrative and governance control over that rural area outside the bounds of the city. Loveland Rural Fire Protection District really encircles the city of Loveland completely. And so it is really the rural side of the operation, and then we have the city side of the operation.
And who's the, what firefighters go to an incident or a fire outside of the city?
That'd be a good one for you to answer, Greg.
Same firefighters that cover the emergencies within the city. And when you walk into one of our fire stations, you'll see fire trucks that say Loveland Fire Rescue on them. You'll see a truck sitting next to it that says Loveland Rural Fire District. And you'll see that engine that says Loveland Rural Fire District on a medical call or a structure fire within the city of Loveland. And you'll see a Loveland Fire Rescue marked vehicle on a fire in the Loveland Rural Fire Protection District. So it's really a cooperation between the two, but it's the same firefighters, both the paid and volunteer firefighters for that area.
Okay, so you guys may have to travel a short distance or a significant distance to get to something.
Yes.
Okay. And I can't tell from this map, how far west is that? I mean, is that, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can see the split. Is that the split in the road where it goes to, is that Drake right there?
Actually, our district ends about a mile above Drake.
Beyond it?
About a mile west of Drake, about Waltonia is where our fire protection district ends. There's actually a sign up on Highway 34 that shows that tells you you're leaving the Loveland Rural Fire Protection District.
And to the north there, that square to the north? Where is that?
Buckhorn.
Masonville.
Above Masonville.
The Redstone Canyon area.
Okay. Okay, well, so you go from the flatlands on the east side of town here to, what, 6,000, 7,000 feet?
Yes. About 6,500, yeah,
Wow.
because the Storm Mountain area is all in the Loveland Rural Fire Protection District, so.
Okay.
It's important too to note, Andy, that we also have the Big Thompson Canyon Fire Department is also located in that area that Merlin was describing, around that Drake area as well. And so we work cooperatively with them as well.
I see. And is that a paid organization or volunteers?
No, that's strictly volunteer.
I got you. Okay. All right. All right. Well, let's change course here a little bit and talk about talk about your last name. Okay. Your last name is Rescue. You do a lot of unusual things, and we've got kind of a list of them. And I know, Greg, you're what, the premier guy with this, or the quarterback for this?
That's what we say. He is the premier guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So why don't you take us through kind of the concept and some of these various skills and things you respond to.
Okay. Most of what we're going to talk about is handled by the special operations team with this. When we talk water rescue, hazmat, some urban search and rescue type situations, and there's 35 Loveland Fire members on the special ops team. There's 7 Thompson Valley paramedics, Thompson Valley EMS paramedics,
okay,
and 2 Berthoud firefighters make up the special operations team we have. The first one there to talk about is Swiftwater, and that's really a summertime after the snowpack melts kind of situation for us in the Big Thompson River, some of the canals and stuff we have, where we'll get somebody, a kayaker or somebody that's in the water, and it takes especially trained people to get out there in that fast-moving water and to try and rescue them, and takes some hardy people. I've watched our guys come out of that beat up, bruised up from the rocks and stuff in that. It's a tough situation, a very dangerous situation to be in.
I bet, and I bet that water's pretty chilly that time of year too.
Yeah, very chilly.
Okay. Well, next on my list and my next slide. So you guys aren't looking for sharks and coral? No. Oh, okay.
I think they would. Most of the divers would not mind seeing a shark, but because a lot of them dive recreational
I'll bet,
as well.
I'll bet, yeah.
We've got 14 certified divers on our special ops team that probably we respond to about one dive rescue call of some sort each month. The dive rescue portion is really the lakes we have in the area, and particularly the bigger boating lakes. Boyd Lake, Carter Lake, Lake Loveland provide most of our incidents in the summertime. That type of thing. The wind comes up at Carter Lake and blows the boats over, and we have people in the water. Really good relationships with the county rangers and the state rangers at those Boyd Lake and Carter Lake that help us out too, and they're really the first responders into those, and a lot of times can get things set up really well for us to get there.
Okay. Well, that's how you spend your summertime. How about this time of year on those lakes?
This time of year, and it's varies so much with the type of winter that we actually have. This winter, the ice has been so good, I guess you'd say, that it really hasn't been a problem. But as it starts to warm up this spring is when we'll see the issues with the thin ice and the fishermen. One of the big ones is the dogs go out on the ice, and our big concern with that is the owner wants to do something to save the dogs, so the owner goes out on the ice, and that's really why we go after the dogs, is because we don't want the owner or somebody else to go in after them, and then we have a rescue of an actual person.
I can see that. I'm a major league dog owner, and you'd probably have to put me on a leash to keep me from going out after my pooch. Okay. Well, hazmat, I think everybody knows what that stands for, but it stands for
hazardous materials. And there's a big gamut of hazardous materials, everything from the small fuel spills at a gas station or from a vehicle accident. Natural gas leaks in our house is actually considered a hazmat release.
It's very hazardous,
that type of thing, to industrial type things where we're dealing with train cars or tanker trucks that roll over and are leaking their fluids, to some of the industrial facilities we have that have chemicals. And really, the hazmat's job is to try and isolate the area, identify what the chemical is, and then a lot of times it's a long event to plan out what are we going to do to stop the leak or control the leak, control the spill, and involves at some point a lot of environmental specialists to try and make sure that what we're doing is correct. And then when we transfer that incident, when it's no longer an emergency, it's a cleanup, that we do that correctly with all the environmental impacts.
Okay.
And if I can interrupt, along with what Chief Ward was talking about, while they're actively working on establishing their plan, their procedures, how they're going to mitigate that incident, we're working hand in hand, helping to, if we need to send out notifications to the public that is in that vicinity. It might be we want them to stay inside, closed doors, windows, type of things, working with the media. So we may not be actively involved putting the suits on, but we're working hand in hand with them to help alleviate some of those calls that are coming in. People will, well-intentioned members, but they will call 911, hey, I see all these fire trucks, what's going on?
Right.
And it really inundates our dispatch center. So the more we can be out there to help alleviate some of that fear and concern, the better off the community is.
Well, that brings to mind a couple of things we can give a plug for, okay? One is our information line that we've established or use more frequently now, so that if you have a question like that, it's not an emergency, but you're curious, or you think the roads are closed and you got to get to the other side of town, you want to know what's going on, instead of calling 911 and tying that up when somebody may have an emergency, the 2020 number is the number to call. That number is?
962-2020.
And what you'll find there is a
and what people will be directed to, if there's any types of information out there, they can, they're prompted to, and I don't remember the numbers right off, but they're prompted to follow a sequence, and then if we have recorded information, that's where we will record that. So in the case of a hazardous materials incident, we can record a message that there's no hazard in the area, just please avoid the area, whatever information we want to do. So,
and if it's even more of an emergency than that, as opposed to an advisory, just stay at home, let us take care of this. If there is stuff in the air, close your windows, or I'm just using hazmat as an example. That brings into mind LEDA, which is something that's relatively new and a way for people to get signed up so that you don't have to call us, we'll call you. And explain what LEDA is and how to sign up for that.
LEDA is the Larimer Emergency Telephone Authority, and they're the governing body that collects surcharge on your phones, and that's the money collected to buy the recording equipment and a lot of the, as it's called, backroom equipment in the dispatch centers. Along with that, the Larimer Emergency Telephone Authority has a product that is it's an emergency phone notification system, and so we can launch messages that are considered emergency messages to hardline phones. Now, if you have a cell phone, we can't get that information. You have to opt in, and to opt in, that's
You have to sign up.
you have to sign up for it, and that you want to request to receive emergency notification, and that's LETA, L-E-T-A 911.org.
Okay, so as things are right now, if you have a home phone, you'll get the notice. But if you have a cell phone, or you want an email in addition, or that sort of thing, that's the new offering of LETA, but you do have to go online and sign up for it.
Correct.
And again, that website is?
LETA, L-E-T-A 911.org.
Great, thanks. Okay, we didn't really have that on our list, but I thought it was worth a mention. Okay, so we've talked about hazmat and some of the things. Urban search and rescue is the next category here. Here is my next photo, and these are the types of things you see on the news on occasion.
Yeah, the
Is that you upside down?
Urban Search and Rescue, we call it USAR, but it encompasses rope rescue, trench rescue, confined space rescue, collapse rescue, and it gets into some industrial type situations, and also heavy vehicle extrication. An example is a semi-truck or a concrete truck that is rolled over on a vehicle, and a lot of the equipment we need for a collapsed building we would have to use in a situation like that to,
Never thought about
to
that
get
before.
somebody out of that,
Yeah.
that vehicle. The rope rescue is all facets of that. Low angle, a car off the side of the embankment, and we need to get a patient up to, we have some of the premier rock climbing and ice climbing areas in the state in our district,
Yeah.
up in the Drake area. So the vertical rope rescue, high angle rescue in those situations. Trench rescue, collapse rescue, those are tied together in a lot of ways with the equipment, especially when we have the growth and stuff that we've seen in our area over the past few years. The number of open trenches and workers in trenches and stuff that we have, when you drive around, you don't pay attention to it until we really started doing some of this trench rescue, and there's just a whole bunch of those when we drive around and we look at that, and the potential there to have a worker caught in a trench collapse is just huge in our area, and the soil is very poor for that kind of work and stuff, so that it's just a high potential. As the chief says, it's one of those very low frequency, very high risk operations that we would have to work in.
Sure. Well, another one that I've learned about, wasn't really aware of, in addition to, as you mentioned, rescuing small animals like a pooch in the ice, you go for the big guys too, so to speak.
Yeah, we've started this over the past couple years. We had a horse that fell in a trench, and we have all the equipment for lifting heavy stuff. And so we went out to lift something heavy, is the way we looked at it. We found out that a horse is a whole different animal, if you want to call it that. No problem.
Well put.
Than lifting things that we're used to lifting that are considered about the same weight, I guess. So we started working with CSU and their vet center up there, and established a pretty good relationship there. We've got some firefighters that have now been trained in how to actually lift an animal. We have the harnesses we built in-house and stuff to actually do that. And we've this past probably 3 or 4 months, I think we've had 3
Really?
horse rescues,
Wow.
which is unusual. It's
Yeah.
high. There's
Uh-huh.
1 or 2 a year is kind of what we anticipated. We only are able to help when they're actually trapped in something. If they've fallen and have a medical problem, we're probably not going to be able to commit to helping with that. But if they're actually trapped in something, and we're worried particularly about the horse owners and the vets and that kind of thing, trying to do something, we'll probably be able to help them out and do some lifting. And there's a cooperation with another city agency that we've found there in the light and power department.
Oh,
They have
okay.
a truck that they dig their power pole holes with and set those with, that makes a great crane and anchor for us
I
for
gotcha.
doing that.
Huh.
So the last couple we've had, we've called them out,
Mm-hmm.
and both of them have been on the weekend, so their on-call people have brought that out, and
Uh-huh.
it's worked great to give us a point to lift an animal out of a trench.
Great, great, okay. Well, the next one on my list is tactical firefighting. What do you mean by that?
This is something that just kind of developed. We started doing some work with the SWAT team for the Loveland Police Department, and I think it actually started on a call one day, and we had our heavy rescue truck there, and they were kind of looking at the equipment carried in it, and they started talking about how beneficial that would be for some of their breaching and different things they needed to do. And so it just kind of grew out of that. We started talking about SWAT incidents and what happens if we have a fire. If they have somebody barricaded in a house and we have a fire, are we, the police department or us, prepared to deal with that? So we have some people on our tactical firefighting team now that they look like SWAT personnel. They have all the gear, they have the training with the SWAT team, and can help in some of those roles. Also provide them some rope capabilities. If SWAT needed to rappel into a multi-story building,
I gotcha.
something like that from the roof, we can help them out because we have all that equipment and the training to do that. So it's just something that kind of developed basically from standing next to a truck going, they're asking, what's that? And we could use that.
Uh-huh.
We could use that. And it's been a great relationship builder between the fire department and police department.
Well, the last minute or two, something strikes me as wrong. I'm sorry, Chief. We're a governmental agency, and you've talked about the fire department working with the water and power department. Now you've talked about the fire department working with the police department. That suggests cooperation
Yes.
and communication, but we're a
Yes.
governmental agency. We're not supposed to be doing that. That's out of character for us.
I know, Andy, it seems out of character, but for us, we actually depend on that. And we have a tremendous relationship with Loveland PD, thanks to Chief Hecker and his staff. We have a tremendous relationship with Thompson Valley Ambulance, thanks to Chief Lesher and his staff. And it's oftentimes been said amongst us, we're all in the same business, so it works best if we get along.
Absolutely.
And so we do our level best to cooperate. And what Chief Ward talked about was really an outcome of that. We have a good relationship where we can meet together, train together, operate together in training and on the street. When we see a need like what Greg was describing in the TAC fire operations, those things naturally develop.
Good, good. I have to give you guys a hard time, you know that. Okay, all right. You just mentioned the Thompson Valley Ambulance Service, okay? I don't know if it's usual or unusual or whatever, but the ambulance program or department or operation is totally separate from the city police department. I don't think they're paid by the city or anything. Explain how that works, if you would, kind of just a quick overview.
They're a separate organization from both the city PD and the city fire department and Loveland Fire and Rescue. But we actually operate and cooperate very well together. The way it works functionally is the fire department can provide what's called BLS, basic life support, and where the ambulance service comes in and provides ALS, advanced life support, a much higher level of service. And yet, both are critical. BLS is needed and is critical for the patient's survival, as is ALS. But what oftentimes happens is when we operate jointly, we can ensure that a unit will arrive on scene in a much quicker fashion than if we were trying to do it independently. So that's why sometimes on a medical emergency, you asked Chief Ward earlier about car wrecks, sometimes we'll go on a medical emergency, someone having a heart attack, and oftentimes the engine that arrives there, the fire unit, may be closer than the ambulance is. We'll arrive, start basic life support, then the ambulance will arrive and do an ALS. We have a very beautiful system here that functions well together.
And the dispatch center, the communications people who are on the radio when you dial 911, they are dispatching both you guys and the ambulance, and I guess police as need be. But I mean, the ambulance folks, because they're not part of the city, they don't have their own separate dispatch operation. We cover everything. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, speaking about covering things, and let's talk about how the governance or how this all will be pulled together or not. Now, I understand there's a discussion underway that City Council has suggested you look into a possible significant change in the overall operation or governance of the city fire department.
That's correct, Andy. We had some direction from council late last year to do a full-scale investigation, a feasibility study, if you will, for a fire authority. Now, that just means simply that it's a quasi-governmental agency where we would actually combine into one the City of Loveland Fire Department, Loveland Fire and Rescue, and the Loveland Rural Fire Protection District. We would merge them into one agency under a fire authority. Now, what that would mean for us from a practical standpoint is that it would create a real partnership between the two agencies that have the ability to address issues, problems, developments unilaterally across the board. Right now, we're more or less doing that independently.
I see.
The city deals with issues on the city side, the rural board deals with things on the rural side. But those problems, those issues transcend each other. And the more we grow, the larger our area gets, the more complex those problems, those issues get. So we're really looking at this more of a futuristic side. How can we deliver service better to the community at the most cost-effective way and in cost avoidance by merging the two rather than staying as two separate entities?
And this is an ongoing inquiry, or you're discussing it now.
Yes.
Is a decision likely to occur in the near future, or long-term future? Perhaps you decide, no, we just don't want to do this at all.
We have a rather large group. It's a very eclectic group. They're from all phases of both the city and the rural city government, from our Fire Rescue Advisory Commission. We've tried to engage all the groups in this. And our work will finalize, at least in this phase of the evaluation, sometime around the latter part of March.
Oh, okay.
And after that time, we will make a report back to City Council and the Rural Fire Board with our recommendations from the committee side, and it will, of course, be their decision as to which way we go.
Okay. You're kind of doing the homework,
Yes.
and then City Council will determine which way
They
to
will be
go.
the decision makers along
Okay.
with the Rural Board.
Cool. All right. Well, that's not as exciting as lights and sirens
No,
to
it's
talk
not.
about. I'm
It really
sorry.
isn't.
No, okay. Well, we've talked about a great number of things here. Have we missed anything? Anything else you want to mention before we call it a day?
I guess I would encourage the people to go to our website, because there's a wealth of information out there from not only what public education campaigns, but how to sign up to be a volunteer and what that looks like, and just really an overall snapshot of what the Loveland Fire and Rescue is all about and what we provide. So I think that'd be an excellent tool.
And the website address is
Andy, please.
www.loveland.org, and don't forget the W's, okay?
Yes.
Well, I'll put another plug in for the LETA website as well, because as long as you're on the computer, go to LETA911 and sign up for that emergency service. So, you can sign up for emergency notifications at an address that's not even your home. For example, you can put in your work address or your kid's school address. So if something is going on at one place or another, you'll get a call or an email on your home phone or your cell phone. I think we're way ahead of most of the nation on that, but you got to go there and sign up, otherwise it doesn't do you any good.
And the fact that it's free.
It's free.
It's free.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, in that case, guys, I'm going to suggest we call it a day. Thank you for a wealth of information. And folks, you at home, I hope you've found this enlightening. That's a bit of a pun. That wasn't intended. So we will see you again next month here on Loveland's Talking. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.